Franco, you know what we do here. What do we do?
We keep it rolling. We keep it rolling, baby.
Keeping it rolling. We're keeping it rolling. The Boston Celtics defeat the Los Angeles Clippers 126-94 in regulation on a second night of a back-to-back. Kristaps Porzingis making his long-awaited return. We got a whole lot of bench performances from the Stay Ready group, and the Celtics just absolutely annihilate one of the hottest teams in the NBA right now. Both of these two teams coming in, winning 5 straight games. Celtics snapping the Los Angeles Clippers 5-game winning streak. Celtics advance to their 6-game winning streak. Good evening, everybody. I'm Justin Lowe alongside Mr. Franco, Seamus Starlingo, and Brendon Cox. We are Celtics Talk Weekly. Welcome back. It was the second night of a back-to-back for us, fellas. We it feels like we were just here 24 hours ago talking about the Celtics' big win against Minnesota Timberwolves. Obviously, here, Franco, tonight we'll start with you. You know how it normally goes. Let's give our thoughts on tonight's game. Big win tonight, Franco.
I mean, first initial thought is let's address the 7'3" elephant in the room, the return of Kristaps Porzingis. I think his impact was felt immediately, especially the fact that they were able to get him hot into the rotation, getting him his open looks during the first quarter, letting him get those 3-point shots, and it shows what he's going to bring to this offense. We already knew what he brought to the offense and defensive side from last year's performances, but it was so refreshing to see it back out on the court. It seemed like all the errors that we were seeing throughout the past few games without him were covered up. There were definitely less defensive lapses in the paint. The Celtics did a great job of out-rebounding a strong Clippers team. They've been one of the more challenging teams that the Celtics have seen all season, and definitely a team that will definitely make some noise in the West. But I think that moving forward, the Celtics have been doing a great job of growing into the team that they've already became.
Yeah, and can we just say this right now, folks? Can we say this? The Celtics, this is the first game in a while where they actually dominated from start to finish. Last year, it was almost every game, it felt like. We came on here and it was, oh, the Celtics, they're up by 20, they're up by 30, they're up by 40. And it was almost like they didn't leave us with much to talk about last year because they were dominating the rest of the league. Now, so far this year, without Kristaps Porzingis in the lineup, of course, the team is still very, very good without him, but just a couple of games throughout the season, we've seen it where the team doesn't quite look as dominant as they did last season, and they didn't quite close out games the way we saw last season, whether it was letting teams get back into games, which we saw a little bit tonight, but the team, of course, reconciled that problem, or just letting teams, inferior teams, that is, hang around the Celtics. Yet tonight, no Norman Powell. Of course, no Kawhi Leonard hasn't been there with the Clippers all season, but particularly no Norman Powell for the Clippers, their leading scorer on the season tonight. Of course, on the Celtics side, a little worrisome, no Al Horford, no Cornette. It was like, oh, how are we going to deal with Zubac tonight? Well, how we dealt with Zubac is we let him get his points, and everybody else, they stood in the background while KP and Kata, they were phenomenal tonight. And the Celtics from three-point land, the Clippers, they just couldn't keep up. I mean, the Celtics, they started out, 11 of 25 from three, I want to say. And the Clippers, they were outpaced from three-point land. And yes, they did make a little bit of a comeback, but it really wasn't anything the Celtics had to worry about, as the Celtics, they were up 28 points early in that second quarter, went down to only 15 there in the third quarter. But of course, we see the 32-point win coming out of this evening for the Celtics. And this, I don't know if you guys agree with this, this might be the best game all season for the Celtics that they played.
Hands down.
Yeah, no, I definitely, to go back on Seamus's point, though, yeah, most games this year have ended, kind of came, down to the wire, and, just like last year, we had all those, kind of large margin wins, but tonight was a good example of, that we can keep those games going. I think I think a lot of it obviously had to do with the fact that Porzingis came back, and he kind of had, the momentum going into this game as well. He was comfortable shooting the ball, not so much in the first quarter when he was taking a lot of threes, but when he, what Scal was saying too, when he's, shooting those threes and he's getting comfortable with them, he's just unstoppable. But yeah, tonight was a good win to keep on to, and I just think if we got to keep rolling like this when he's in the lineup.
Absolutely, guys. Listen, we're gonna get to Kristaps Porzingis, so hold your horses on that, guys. I want to talk to you about that
So we want
historic.
to talk about the big man.
Listen though. I wanted to. I want to because we're gonna get to KP. This show's gonna be all about Kristaps Porzingis. I want to talk about that second quarter though, really quick, guys, because that second quarter was absolute. You gotta be kidding me. Okay, sorry, the cat's playing with the loudest toy in the room again. Were playing absolutely historic in that second quarter. They had 51 points in the second quarter, which is tied for the most in franchise history for a second quarter. Only twice in NBA history has a team scored more in the second quarter. Phoenix versus Denver in 1990, in who was it? Washington versus Detroit in 1965, courtesy of Dick Leip of NBC Sports Boston. So this is something that has very rarely ever been done before, Franco. 51 points, 12 made three-pointers in that second quarter. Felt as if I was on the joysticks playing NBA 2K.
On rookie mode, sliders down or up to 100. And I think the Celtics just really found their natural state, flow state, if you will. I think that having Kristaps on the court did something for the team emotionally. They were a lot more bought in. It seemed like they were back to their winning ways, which we were almost seeing them lose that type of edge in those types of games that were facing an injury prone team. And I think they just did a fantastic job of being able to spread the ball out. Jaylen Brown having another back-to-back amazing performance. I think he's really stepped up and almost is. I wouldn't be crazy to say that we may have two Celtics in the MVP ladder, not as contenders, but definitely in the category if Jaylen Brown continues his performances he's been having.
Yeah, can we throw this out here right now? I remember a couple of years ago, the Golden State Warriors, they came out in a game against the Denver Nuggets, and this is when the Warriors and the Nuggets, they were fighting for the number one seed in the Western Conference. I believe this was 2018-19. This was a big game for the Warriors and the Nuggets. Oh, who's going to grab the number one seed? And the Warriors, they showed who were the defending champions, and ultimately they didn't win that year, but they were the best team that season if Kevin Durant doesn't get hurt in the finals later. They score 51 points in the first quarter, and that's the talking point throughout all the networks the next day and even throughout the evening. Oh my goodness, the Warriors 51 points in the first quarter. I looked at the box score tonight, the second quarter, 51 points for the Celtics. I want to hear this from the media, okay? Tomorrow and tonight, I want to hear this that, oh my goodness, the Celtics shot 80% from three in the second quarter. 80%. That's ridiculous. 80% from three and 51 points. When I looked at the box score, my eyes lit up because you don't see that too often, even in today's NBA era, where teams, of course, they do get to 40 points quite often in this era. It used to be more of a rarity, but now with teams scoring more and more volume, more three-pointers, they do get to those higher marks more often. But 51 points, that's still ludicrous for an entire quarter. There's only 12 minutes in a quarter. And, of course, at halftime, they had 78 points. I want to hear the media talk about this from the Celtics perspective. We, of course, came out. The NBA releases their weekly power rankings every week. The Celtics were at number one, so we're not too disrespected. But in terms of relative history, this is what I harped on a lot at the end of last season in the playoffs. It's the Celtics, they are on par with those Warriors teams from the late 2010s with Kevin Durant. And what I think puts us on par is, of course, the man we're going to continuously talk about tonight is Kristaps Porzingis. It's almost like he is our Kevin Durant in a sense. He's not, of course, Kevin Durant caliber top three player in the league, but the Celtics already had one of the best rosters in the league before Kristaps Porzingis. We traded for him in the offseason, traded away Marcus Smart, multiple others, of course, to get Drew Holiday as well. But when those two players entered the Boston roster, the Boston rotation, okay, those two guys made us the caliber of team that the Golden State Warriors were in the late 2010s. And if we didn't lose game 4 last year, right? We were up 3-0. We didn't lose game 4 in the finals last year. We would have had a top 5 record in NBA history spanning from games 1 to all the way to the end of the finals, the end of the playoffs. We would have had a top 5 record in NBA history. Unfortunately, And we had to settle for a top 10 record. I believe we were 8th or 9th because we lost that one game in the finals. But this team, when Kristaps Porzingis is out there and the entire team's healthy and the entire team is hitting at the caliber in which we see that we hit tonight, we are seriously one of the best teams in NBA history. And I say we, well, of course, the Boston Celtics, that is. They're champions.
Hey, you got your banner in the title, so you can say it.
Right here. World champions. 2024. We're trying to put up a 2025 one over here. See, the spot is blank over here. 2025. We're trying to do it this season. But this team, it's no lie and it's no joke that they are on the same par as those Golden State Warriors teams. And this was just another data point tonight. 51 points in the second quarter. That's just absolutely ridiculous.
You know, I just think it's I'm still looking back in the second quarter, like how, you know, we go from some nights where we have, you know, we start the game off by having 40 in the first quarter, and all of a sudden we jump back into the second quarter. We're putting up, like Seamus was just saying too, 50 points is crazy. Yeah. It's just like and then like, I mean, we're a team that can do this though. We go for halves, like the first halves, like we go for like almost 80 points in the half. Like that happens all the time too. Consistency, if we want to keep these things going too, is key. But I'm not going to keep name dropping him, but Porzingis definitely helps our momentum a lot and kind of get this team back into shape. So it's definitely going to be exciting to see it. So I know I can't help it say his name. I'm sorry.
I think
we can't hold out any longer.
No, it's just like, I'm just excitement. I mean, I was in the chat earlier. I was saying like, oh, I mean, I don't know if it's too early, but if he continues like the playing like he did tonight, like, I mean, don't worry about it. Just keep it slow. Yeah.
I think with this game specifically, second night of a back-to-back, coming in a little bit sluggish. I feel as if in that first quarter definitely didn't get off to the hottest of starts, but I thought the energy was absolutely there, and that's what you need to see. Second nights of back-to-backs, usually you're coming in dragging, but the energy was there. I don't know if this was because Kristaps Porzingis was back in the starting lineup. I don't know necessarily what it was. But tonight, the energy was absolutely there for the Celtics. They got off to that great start in that great second quarter for sure. Jason Tatum was going, nearly had a double-double just in that first quarter. I believe it was about 8 points and 6 or 7 rebounds in that first quarter. He was very, very engaged. So just a big night for the Boston Celtics. Okay, guys. Okay, I feel as if we're 15 minutes into the show and we haven't brought up the player of the game. We got to go with Kristaps Porzingis, right? I mean, this guy who's missed 5 months of action comes in all of a sudden out of nowhere. First Shams bomb of the season, it feels as if, since Woj retired. Comes in this morning and drops a early Christmas miracle for the Boston Celtics. Kristaps Porzingis in his return tonight, 16 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 stocks. He was a +3 tonight, 50% shooting from the field in nearly 23 minutes. Now, this was, I wasn't expecting, I wasn't really expecting Kristaps Porzingis to play upwards of 20 plus minutes, but we did see that tonight, and he looked like he didn't skip a beat. Guys, listen, it is holiday season. Christmas is right around the corner. What better way than to gift your friends and family Celtics tickets? Celtics are rocking and rolling right now. Pretty cool to catch these guys live. You can use code Celtics Weekly at checkout for $20 off your first purchase. Of course, that is Celtics Weekly for $20 off your first purchase. Franco, we'll start with you. Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, this is a guy, as I mentioned, 5 months off. Celtics coming off an NBA championship, probably targeting around a January return. We heard at Media Day that Porzingis may be ahead of schedule. I don't know if we thought that he was this ahead of schedule. We are still in November, Franco, and he comes out tonight and he looks like he had missed absolutely no time. He shot 1 for 6 from distance. Go back and watch the film. A lot of wide open threes, playing drop coverage. Can't play drop coverage against Kristaps Porzingis. He will make you pay, but it looks like he didn't skip a beat, Franco.
Yeah, I thought he was still frozen in the ice like he was Captain America. I thought that we weren't going to be seeing him until around the Christmas time. I thought we were going to keep him in the bubble wrap until the NBA Cup time. And even today, I thought we were going to slowly work him in. Hell, I thought we weren't even going to see more than 15 minutes from him. But we saw almost dare to say, knock on wood, a fully healthy Kristaps Porzingis out on the court. And I know Joe and Brad wouldn't have put him out on the court if he wasn't anything else. I think that what it's going to bring to this team is a lot of comfort, and you're going to see his return affect the players around him more than it affects him. I think that you're going to see Al Horford beginning to get the rest, Tillman being able to play more of his position and role. And I also think that Cornette and Keita will also benefit from him coming back despite them losing minutes. I think they're going to be able to be diluted into a role that they feel more comfortable doing. I think Keita is still a developing player. I think that his potential is through the roof. I think if he's properly worked on, but it just adds another dimension to the Celtics roster that was missing during the first quarter of the season so far, and it's just good to have him back. Having that athleticism on the defensive end, being able to get to those shots and chase them down and not being a foul in the paint has been phenomenal to watch from him. And I'm just looking forward to seeing how they continue to manage him. And if he's off the leash, good luck for the rest of the NBA for the rest of the season.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Kristaps Porzingis, of course, we're always going to say this anytime a player comes back and we win by 32, but this was the perfect opportunity to bring him back in. I know we think a little, maybe a little early in November, but we, of course, aren't Kristaps Porzingis. We aren't the medical team. They initially give us a timeline of return, late December, maybe early January, but that was months ago. And if he's progressing along and feels well, and of course, we saw him out there for feels like a month plus. He was really practicing very, very hard, whether it was in practice or before games. A lot of people actually saw him at the arena practicing before games. But tonight, the Clippers, they didn't really have the personnel to go up against Kristaps Porzingis. And this was a good night it's never a good night to have players out, but if we're going to have Horford and Cornette sit because of injuries or rest or whatever it is, this was the night to do it because the Clippers, they don't really have any big guys. They were missing Mo Bamba tonight. And their one big guy on the roster right now who actually played was Zubac. And, of course, he had himself quite a night and led the scoring for the Clippers, or I believe he led the way for the Clippers about
23 and 10.
Yeah, and the rest of the roster, if you look at their bench, there really isn't a big guy coming off the bench. There's no other big guy in the starting lineup. Last year, they had a plethora of bigs. They had Daniel Tice, they had Mason Plumlee, they had Zubac, and they could go to all these different versatile matchups against the Celtics. Remember, last year the Celtics were absolutely blown out by the Clippers at the Garden, and that same sense wasn't exactly there tonight. And this was a good game for Kristaps Porzingis to come back because the rotation, the matchups the Clippers had to throw at the Celtics didn't exactly match up with what we had in Kristaps Porzingis and Keita out there. And Kristaps Porzingis, he started out, he played about 6.5 minutes, came out of the game. Keita played the next 10.5 minutes. And then Kristaps Porzingis played 6.5 minutes again in the second quarter, and then he rounded out. He started the third quarter, played about 7.5 minutes, came back for about 2 minutes in the fourth quarter. And again, that's another aspect of why this was a great return for Kristaps Porzingis and the perfect opportunity for Joe Mazzulla and the Celtics to throw him out there, because we blew out the Clippers and he didn't have to go in there in the fourth quarter, and we didn't have to play him a couple extra minutes. He was playing in about 6-7 minute stints. That's where they wanted him at tonight. And in the fourth quarter, we didn't have to play him at all. We were up by we weren't up by 30 when he came out of the game, but we eventually went back up by 30. We were up by 20 plus at the point in which he came out of the game, and we didn't have to rely on his presence at the end of the game to go and pull the game out. So that was another aspect of why it was great to have Kristaps Porzingis back. And I thought tonight too, they didn't force him into a lot of plays. A lot of plays came to him naturally. He saw 6 shots from 2, 6 shots from 3. He wasn't exactly banging in the post, and a lot of those shots from 2 were just lobs to Porzingis on wide open cuts to the rim or wide open rolls to the rim. So Kristaps Porzingis coming back, this was the game. This was a nice little starter for him going forward. Now I wonder how much he's going to play, if they're going to manage him in the future. We do have 3 days rest between now and the Cup game on Friday against the Chicago Bulls. So, and that's another reason too. You play him tonight. You didn't play him yesterday against a team that has a plethora of bigs in the Minnesota Timberwolves last night or last afternoon. Now you have 3 days rest coming off of this game where he actually gets his feet under him against a team that really can't match up with them in the Celtics. Now you have 3 days rest. Now the cup game comes up, and now you can really start to insert and integrate Kristaps Porzingis into the lineup. So, of course, we talked about Porzingis. We're probably going to talk about him even more so, but I stand on the statement of this was really the perfect opportunity for him to come back, despite it being maybe a little early from what the initial timeline was.
So would you say, Seamus, last night it was very surprising that Neemias Queta had a coach's decision, a healthy scratch, because this is a guy who, yes, he has been struggling the past couple games. This is a guy who's been starting in the starting lineup in the past few weeks for Kristaps Porzingis, and when Al Horford misses games as well. Do you think that this was kind of planned a little bit? You saw no Nemi last night and CKP tonight, or last night, and you think they played those two tonight and then rested Al Horford for tonight? Do you think that that's what happened, or do you think it was strictly matchup based why Nemi didn't get the go last night and Tillman did?
I think there was certainly some planning within that, because if you look at who played last night, Tillman and Horford, they're the more experienced bigs. Now, of course, outside of Porzingis, they have the same amount of experience. But Queta, if you're going up against Gobert, if you're going up against Naz Reid, if you have Julius Randle, who likes to go in the low post as well, he would be battling with Queta if he were to be out there. Queta, for as great as he's been in portions of the season relative to what his expectations are, there have been a couple of moments where we look at him and go, all right, maybe not the best option right here. He's not the most sound player in every single area. And I think last night, or last afternoon rather, yesterday, I don't believe that he would have been the best matchup to throw at Gobert, Naz Reid, and Julius Randle, those three experienced bigs. And that's why we saw Tillman and Horford yesterday. And tonight, like I mentioned, only Zubac out there. I believe you can go out there and actually play him against Zubac, because Zubac has been having quite a season up to this point. You do want Queta to form those repetitions over time and have him be a part of the rotation in some sense, because I believe as time moves on, when Kristaps Porzingis comes back into the lineup, as we move later on in the season, we still have Tillman, we still have Horford, specifically Horford. He's, of course, an older gentleman. We want to manage his minutes. We want to manage Al Horford's minutes going forward. And I think we're going to see more of them later in the season. And Queta, he's probably going to take a little bit of a back seat in the rotation, especially considering we have Cornet as well. So these early season reps for Queta against big guys who, yes, they're quality. You have Zubac and a quality big, but after him, there really isn't much the Clippers have to play. And you do want him to form those reps over time and hopefully have him as an option later on down the line when, hey, maybe we do want to play Horford here, and there, but we don't want to play Horford on a second night of a back-to-back, or we want to limit his minutes here, but we still want to play well. We want to be able to insert Queta into those moments. And he's had those good moments this year, but at times Queta isn't exactly the most sound big on the floor. And if the Celtics are really going to want to win consistently and grab that number one seed, because I think it's safe to say the number one seed, it won't be as easy as attaining it last year. We haven't held the number one seed in almost a month now over the Cavaliers, and there are other teams challenging us as well. If the Celtics want to attain that home court advantage throughout the playoffs and really play well later into the season, into the playoffs, they're going to want to have their top bigs, Porzingis, Horford, Tillman, Cornet, and then Queta out there. And if Queta has to play, you do want him to have these repetitions from early season in his head and that experience. So I do think it was a little plan between these two nights for sure. I think if you look at the personnel on the floor and who really played, I think the Celtics had this all mapped out, specifically Joe Mazzulla.
B, what'd you like from KP tonight?
This is going to sound wicked strange, but just hear me out on this one. I would not play him over 20 minutes at this stage right now, especially if we were blindsided by this early comeback. But don't get me wrong, though. Listen, if he can play, like I said this like earlier back in the show, if he just plays that consistent, like I don't have a problem with it though. But like I think what I was saying in the group chat earlier was too. It's like when, tonight matchup wise against Zubac, one of the best rebounders in the league, fine, play him against that. I have no problem with that. But if we're kind of having like this little bit of a blowout, but like you need him for if we kind of say if God forbid we were to blow it, like that's fine. But like I think if we're just like kind of having fun out there, it's like don't because what's gonna
So
happen if like
were you
if we do
shocked
alley
when he went
oops?
in that fourth quarter?
Yeah, exactly. It's like we were just kind of like giving up a lot of alley oops in the fourth quarter. We were doing the same thing. It's just like yeah, like don't intend to like push them out there for like don't throw them out there for like plays we don't need them for. That's just my opinion, but.
For me, with Kristaps Porzingis, he, in Jason Tatum's words, is an absolute cheat code. He is a cheat code. The Celtics are one of the best teams in the league, if not the best team in the league, without Kristaps Porzingis. You add Kristaps Porzingis back into that lineup, you're going to see a lot of outcomes like this. A lot of outcomes like this against a lot of really solid teams. He didn't. He had mentioned it in the opener. Didn't even look like he skipped a beat. There was no favoring that foot. There was no limping. There was no lack of aggression with Kristaps Porzingis. He was deflecting shots. He was protecting the rim. There was this one play, I believe it was late in the third quarter, where he jab step blew by Zubac and slammed it home. That to me, like he looks healthy, he looks comfortable, and I think over time you will see his minutes progress. I can see what you're insinuating. Be on the minutes thing and playing over 20 minutes. A little bit surprised to see KP go in that starting lineup and play nearly 23 minutes tonight, but also he just looked really, really, really sharp and he reminded me a little bit of that game one against Dallas, although he wasn't knocking down 3 after 3, just the intensity and it definitely lived up to the hype, right? Like I feel like when players return and it's this big hype and everything like that, and then they just kind of come out and they look like they're returning from injury. KP didn't look like he returned from injury tonight, and I think that's very important. And the Celtics came out with a huge win. I want to stay on the topic of big men really quick because I want to give my flowers out to Neemias Queta because we talked about it a little bit. Seamus, you mentioned his name. DNP last night looked really off in that he struggled in that Cleveland game. He didn't really look that sharp in that Washington game, which I thought would have been his bounce back game. Came out tonight and he played stellar off the bench in 25 minutes, nearly notched a double-double, 12 points and 9 rebounds. He was after it defensively, guys. He was after it defensively. 2 steals and 4 blocks. He was protecting the rim. He looked really controlled tonight. I really like to see this from Neemias Queta. Big bounce back game from him. And you mentioned it, Seamus. Maybe when Porzingis and Horford are both consistently in the lineup, we might see Kornet and or Tillman over Neemias Queta, but still, nonetheless, these are the games that you want to see from these depth pieces because, hey, maybe their number doesn't get called in these situations, in these primetime matchups, or in the NBA playoffs. But at the same time, the more reps that these guys get, the more comfortable and the more fluid that their game is when their number is called. So, Seamus, talk to me about Neemias Queta because remember last year on the post-game shows, we were talking, the big debate was Neemias Queta, Luke Kornet. Is that still up for debate? Do you think that's still a debate?
Oh, of course. And I think the Celtics, they have an embarrassment of riches once again. I mean, last year they had an embarrassment of riches, but in terms of the big man rotation this year, look at all our bigs. Kristaps Porzingis, he's an all-star center. I mean, he can be an all-star center if he was on his own team and playing consistently, all that good jazz. We've seen him be an all-star already in his NBA career. After that, we have Al Horford. After that, we have Xavier Tillman, who, I mean, he took a pay cut to come back here to Boston. He could have gone anywhere else and got a payday. He almost individually won us Game 3 of the NBA Finals last year. You never know. If he doesn't show up from the corner in that game, the series might be 2-1. Dallas, of course, won Game 4. It could have been 2-2 down in Dallas, coming back to Boston. Series all tied up, best of 3. Instead, Tillman puts that series at 3-0, and the Celtics, of course, go on and win the title in 5 games. So you have those 3 bigs to start out, but then you have Luke Kornet, who I cannot say enough good things about Luke Kornet because a couple seasons ago, we traded for him, and we thought he was going to be a player that we waived right away. Remember in those trades with the Chicago Bulls and the Washington Wizards, I believe it was a 3-way deal. We sent out Daniel Tice, Javonte Green. We were shifting around cap numbers.
Right.
And that was just a lost season, essentially. Well, he comes in, he's not waived. He plays the rest of that season. And then the next year, he's not even on the roster to start the year. He's in the G League with the Bucks and the Cavaliers. We bring him up, of course, to the Celtics roster. And ever since, he's been just slowly developing in the Celtics system. And he's one of 3 guys I really look at right now. And last year, that really added to our championship team last year. Hauser, Pritchard, Cornette, those were no guarantees. Hauser undrafted. Yeah. Cornette, you're looking at him, and we thought he was going to be waived. Pritchard, he's the 26th pick in the draft. Those 3 players played crucial roles on the Celtics throughout the regular season last year, and some of them even in the playoffs. And of course, that can be the fine margin between being a championship level team and just being an average team with nice superstars. We see nice superstars all around the league, and some of the teams now, it's like, oh, they're benched. Like, oh, they haven't drafted well. Oh, they haven't developed players well. Like the Nuggets, like the Bucks. It's like, all right, you have Giannis, you have Nikola Jokic, but the rest of the roster isn't that great. Those 3 players played phenomenally for the Celtics last year. And Cornette, he's essentially our 4th or 5th big. And Keita, he's actually, I should say, Keita should be a part of this conversation now. I'm completely glossing over him. He was really what the question was about. He is a part of that group now, where last year we signed him to the Sacramento Kings. He's on their preseason roster, and the Kings go, we don't really need you. We don't really need you, Keita. And we bring him in. He earns a standard spot. He started on a 2-way spot last year with the Celtics, earns a standard spot on the roster after the trade deadline. And now we're actually using him early in the season. I do believe that Keita, there are portions of his game where I look at and go, okay, he's not exactly in the right position here or there, especially when they bring him out. He's the player, unfortunately, on the Celtics that teams want to pick on. You always look at basketball. It's about who do teams want to pick on defensively. When you go to the offensive end of the floor and you look at the defense, you always want to pick on certain players. And that's what's ultimately great about the Celtics is there aren't too many players that you can pick on at all, especially in the starting lineup. There's zero players you can pick on in the starting lineup. Once you get down the roster, it's like, okay, can we pick on this guy? Can we pick on that guy? Keita's the one guy that teams want to pick on. And that's really the one thing against him that I saw. And it was really evident in the Warriors game a couple of weeks ago. That was really when I thought the Warriors, with their high movement, high-paced offense, of course, they do a lot of cutting. Steph Curry, Draymond Green, 2 of the bbest passers in the entire NBA, and they have been for a decade now. They really picked him apart in that contest. And that's the one flaw I see with Neemias Queta. And of course, he's not a rookie at all. He's actually an experienced big man in the league, but he does have some of those young player flaws where at moments he's not exactly, like I said earlier, the most sound big to have out there, but he is becoming somebody you can throw out there. And we saw tonight, 5 rebounds in the first quarter. He's very physical, can rebound the ball. He's not just going to give up leverage in the low post. He can shot block. He can do a lot of things out there, but he's our 5th big. And it's amazing the Celtics are playing him this much at this point in time, but I do believe it's in the scope of wanting to get him experience for potentially later on down the line when we do have the top of the big rotation playing more so, especially late in the season, in the playoffs. And Keita, if somebody gets hurt, because let's face it, Kristaps Porzingis, he just missed 5 months. Al Horford, he's above the age of he's 38 now, right? Al Horford, he's 38.
Calling him out twice.
I mean, Al Horford, but it's amazing what he's doing at the age in which he's at. But we can't rely exactly on Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis 24/7 to be healthy. Because look, I mean, yesterday Kristaps Porzingis, we weren't even thinking about him in the lineup. Today, Al Horford misses a game, and you want to have the next couple of bigs, and that's the luxury about the Celtics. We saw a team tonight, the Los Angeles Clippers. They lost both of their bigs in free agency. Plumlee went to the Suns. Tice went to the not to the Clippers. He played with the Clippers last year. Went to the Pelicans, joined the Pelicans, and they lose their big man depth. And they come into a game tonight, and it's just they don't have the personnel to throw at the Celtics. Even though the Celtics, they're missing 3 big guys essentially, or 2 of their big guys, and that's the luxury the Celtics have right now. Is you have all of these bigs in your rotation, 5 of them, who can actually come in and play minutes. And Keita, I do believe he's going to be slotted down later on in time, but these moments early in the season, we're still in November, still very early. I know we're going to be in March at one point, which is still going to be a month away from the playoffs. We're going to go, we're still a month away from the playoffs, and November felt like forever ago. It's going to
Yeah.
feel like that later on in the season. So these are the moments in which you do want to play some of those guys and get them consistent repetitions, get them experience. And I think tonight, I said earlier, I think it was a good learning experience for him to play against Zubac because they're not exactly the same type of big, but they have similar play styles. And when they went at each other in the low post, that's definitely a good point and good data to extract from the game of Keita and have him out there against other bigs who he's not just playing in practice every single day.
I want to stay on the topic of the Celtics bench. We always talk about the starters, rightfully so.
Yeah.
Historically, one of the greatest starting fives I feel as if we've seen, at least in terms of franchise wise. I want to shed light on this bench because tonight, although Kristaps Porzingis provided a majority of that energy, I feel as if this is another game where the bench really lifted us over the edge in this one. Peyton Pritchard. Peyton freaking Pritchard.
Remember we wanted to trade him
Franco.
2 seasons ago?
Franco.
It was 2021, 22. It's like, what are we even doing with
Man.
Pritchard? Should we just trade him, trade bait?
Didn't I say like him for Torrey Craig and Andre Drummond last year?
He went from I don't have a spot here, rightfully so, playing behind sixth man of the year, Malcolm Brogdon, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, to he outlasted. Here's the thing. Peyton Pritchard outlasted Kemba Walker, Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, these guards who the Celtics really trusted, and they went with Peyton Pritchard. And Peyton, they're showing why they went with Peyton Pritchard. 20 points tonight on 6 of 10 shooting. Here's the thing. It's not even the fact that he's scoring 20 points a game. It's the efficiency at which he's doing it. He's 6 of 10, 60% from 3, right? And he's consistently consistent. 6th man of the year coming up here. I mean, he's a leader. And you look at all the sports books, you look at all the media companies, it's Peyton Pritchard who's running away with it. I understand we're only in November, but clear-cut 6th man of the year leader right now in the NBA, Franco. This is a gym rat. A gym rat. He's in the gym constantly. Good game, bad game, doesn't matter. Peyton Pritchard. I do want to personally mention, because when you're the host, you get to kind of give your thoughts and stuff, but you're mainly you're mainly being the point guard here, dishing it out. I do want to say it is a treat to watch Peyton Pritchard, and it is an absolute privilege to be able to watch Peyton Pritchard not just score the basketball, but to facilitate. His playmaking has been spectacular. And I understand he's a point guard, but he's so much known for his scoring, right? I feel as if whenever we talk about Pritchard, we're talking about his 3-point shooting and his ability to score in bunches. It's the playmaking for me. And there was this energizing play in the in the game tonight where Peyton Pritchard ran down the court three quarters of the way down the court and lobbed it up to Kristaps Porzingis, and Porzingis slams it home. And Pritchard had this sweet little nifty in and out dribble, crossed up a couple of defenders, and then
half court shots taken tonight.
Turn on the jets. It's like Mario Kart when you run over one of those rainbow platforms and you just zoom ahead. That's what it was like with Peyton Pritchard, and his playmaking's just been so good. So I just want to give Peyton Pritchard his flowers, and let's spend the next few minutes, Franco, talking about our boy P Rabbit.
I have a comparison that goes across the garden. I would compare Peyton Pritchard to the Boston Bruins' Brad Marchand. I think the energy that he brings to the team.
Is that the guy? Is that the guy who licks the other?
I don't know. We only know Celtics around here, but he is. He has developed into a pest on the defensive end, and he has been able to pick up on those other skills. We knew that he was going to be a bucket getter when he came out of college. That was the main thing that he was presented to us as. We seen him have his major performances, and I think that he has been able to do something that almost a Jrue Holiday can't really do anymore, and that's be that offensive threat to make those plays and be able to cut down into the paint. And you see the teams will try to pick on him and Hauser on the defensive end, and they're not having it. They don't have that, and I think that it's been almost discouraging to other teams watching a 6-foot Peyton Pritchard lock down one of your better point guards and also out rebound one of your better wings. I think that he's done a fantastic job of facilitating, and he just knows how the players on the team work around him. I mean, chemistry is through the roof with this roster, and I think that Pritchard does the job of knowing where to find people to have their best opportunities to score.
There were multiple possessions tonight in which Pritchard was guarding James Harden, and Pritchard had James Harden in federal prison. Harden could not do anything when Peyton Pritchard was guarding him, and that's frustrating, Franco. That is frustrating. We're going to stay on the topic of Peyton Pritchard, but you want to mention his running mate, Sam Hauser. Sam Hauser had some great defensive positions on the perimeter against James Harden. So I just want to give the props to Peyton Pritchard. And it's not just offensively, Seamus, defensively. And Fred VanVleet said this in a podcast. I wish I could give the podcast credit, but he basically said, if you're a smaller guard in the association, you better be able to pick up 94 feet. And that's exactly what Peyton Pritchard does. He can guard you 94 feet, and he will guard you 94 feet away from the basket all the way up to the rim. And he does a pretty damn good job of doing that, Seamus.
Yeah, think about how many guards in the past we've had on two-way contracts, or maybe we've had on standard contracts, but they were down, slotted down in the rotation. We think about guys like Tremont Waters, right? Some of these guys, Walt Lemon Jr. Some of these guys were offensive stalwarts for the Celtics in terms of their minutes when they actually came onto the floor. Now, they weren't exactly productive in the main rotation, but when they came on the floor in garbage time or in the preseason, we thought, ooh, these guys can really score. But ultimately, they couldn't defend worth a lick. And if Peyton Pritchard couldn't defend worth a lick, he would simply be out of the league right now, because small guards who can score, they're about a dime a dozen. They really are. And most of those small guards who can score, they cannot defend. And I'm glad, Justin, you brought up that point from Fred VanVleet, because Peyton Pritchard, I look at Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser, them guarding Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown in practice for the last however many years, 3-4 years, that has to build their defensive ability over time. When you're facing stars like that in practice day after day, I shouldn't say that NBA teams don't practice that often, but you bet these guys definitely go at it pregame and when they actually do get the chance to go and practice. When you're going at those guys day after day, that ability you start noticing things. You start noticing the little things that you can do to disrupt bigger players. And because ultimately, as a smaller guy in the NBA, you have to find your points of leverage in defending other players, because smaller players, they're not going to have the length. Some of them don't have the athleticism. Some of them are not. Their guys are going to be able to score right over them. And you have to find what you are good at. Specifically, these smaller guys, it's usually speed. And typically sometimes they do have more athleticism than who they're guarding, whether it's a forward or a big guy. And ultimately, those little things over time, it's really in the mental part of the game. It's a mental part of the game, and the repetitions that they put in practice against these guys when they actually can go against a Tatum or a Brown on their own team. That really does a lot for them in game when they go out there, because we saw Peyton Pritchard. He wasn't this kind of defender his rookie year. He simply wasn't. And he does fit in the category of Steph Curry as well when it comes to defense, where Steph Curry, not the lengthiest of guards, not the quickest of guards on the defensive end of the floor, but they're competitive. They are competitive on the defensive end of the floor, and they really disrupt things, whether it's off ball or they are picked on a lot. Curry, Pritchard, they're picked on. It's no doubt. When you have the smallest player on the floor and the Celtics, you have all these other guards. You have, Drew Holiday, Derek White. You have Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. You can't pick on all these guys because they're not the best options to pick on. Peyton Pritchard, he's really left as the lone man standing. It's like, we might as well pick on Peyton Pritchard. Yet Peyton Pritchard, like you said, Justin, he made things hard on James Harden tonight. And James Harden, no offense to James Harden, because he's been one of the best scorers in our generation and one of the best playmakers and passers as well. But the minute that defenses actually put hounding pressure on him, especially picking up on him above the 3-point line, he kind of falls out of the game a little bit. He kind of reverts back to, okay, somebody else can take the ball. I'm going to get rid of it real quick and just kind of stand here and catch my breath because I'm working too hard to get past this man. It's the effort that really does a lot for Peyton Pritchard and, of course, Sam Hauser on this team. And they really are a huge part of why the Celtics are so good, especially off the bench, because you'd normally look at those guys 2 seasons ago, I don't think, or 3 seasons ago, rather, we weren't thinking, oh, Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser, they're going to be 2 of the best players off the bench, whether it's making 3-point shots, open 3-point shots. When Tatum and Brown, they collapse the defense, they drive into the paint. These guys are wide open either in the corner or on the perimeter. We weren't thinking they were going to be these type of players off the bench, both offensively and defensively. And speaking on Hauser for a moment, Hauser, he was a defensive wreck when he came into the league. And that is one of the biggest that is one of the biggest improvements in his game over time, because it's not as if Hauser doesn't exactly have the size. He doesn't really have the bulkiness to him, right? But he has the length. He has the length to be an all right defender. And it's really just about positioning and footwork and really being in the right spots against guys and picking up guys in the right spots and not letting them just go right to the lane on you and not letting, I'm letting the help. I'm just letting the help every single time take care of my primary matchup. Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard, they do a good job of not letting guys just go right past them to the rim and making things hard on players. And that's really what's brought another level to the Celtics team, no doubt.
Brendon, is Peyton Pritchard going to continuously make this effort every single night? Could you see this from Peyton Pritchard throughout the course of how many games have we played? Have 18 through the next 60 games? Could we see this from Peyton Pritchard, do you think, for 60 more games plus playoffs?
I think he's feeling like he can be probably, I mean, I think he can keep the consistency going. I think every night he goes on the court, like any player, he just wants to, like, stay the course. I mean, you need to, you're a rising guard in the league, you're still young, you got drafted in 2020. It's just, I mean, he's got a long career ahead of him. And I think, once Drew Holiday has, had his time in Boston or has a time in the NBA, Pritchard could probably jump into that starting point guard role. So I definitely think this is his time. If there's a time for Peyton Pritchard to, make a name for himself, not that he hasn't made a name for himself in like the city of Boston, but like around the league and like, coming off the bench or, preparing to be like a star somewhere else or in Boston, this is the time to do it. Better than, when our team's in a roll. So
Franco, when you look at this team and you look at the depth of this team, is this a team that come playoff time you could see go 8? You usually see 7 or 8 guys deep. Do you think Joe Mazzulla could stretch it out beyond that?
It's such a luxury that they could do it based on matchup. I think if you, let's say, you're faced off with a power forward heavy team, let's say a New York Knicks, you're facing off with them in the playoffs, you can definitely be able to afford to use more big men. I think that you can line them up. You have the luxury of being able to slot Tillman or Horford in that 4 position, and it's also very helpful that Tatum has picked up on the defensive end, and especially in the rebounding. We've been seeing a different type of tenacity come out of Tatum when it comes to attacking the boards, especially minus Kristaps. But I think that is something that will play in, and no player on the Celtics bench, obviously every player needs to stay ready no matter what. I think any player could get pulled off the bench at any time and the Celtics wouldn't back down an inch. And I think Joe is going to continue to experiment with those lineups, and he's got plenty of time to continue to see what works and what doesn't. And just because they're so far ahead, and I think they did such a good job of that last year. We saw it during the final 20 games of the regular season, they were introducing new players, getting people new reps in positions that they're not used to. And I think it's just being able to find where everyone has their comfortability zone and having them capable to go outside of that as well.
The Boston Celtics next game is Friday night, guys. And that Friday night game is the final game of the NBA Cup group play stage. Now, the Boston Celtics took care of business in Washington last week. They defeated the Washington Wizards by 12 points, which was pretty big. Not only did they get the win, but they needed that point differential big time. Not too sure why the Washington Wizards were fouling down the stretch. I understand maybe trying to preserve the game, but at the same time, in a tournament where point differential matters, you're letting the Boston Celtics add to their already lead with the clock stopped. I love the in-season tournament, by the way, guys. There's a lot of hate on it. I shouldn't say a lot
Cup
of hate,
now,
but
the
NBA Cup, the NBA Cup, the Emirates.
We're the
Cup.
OGs. We remember the time when it was called the in-season tournament.
That's right. That's right. And I love the we're playing a full 48 minutes of that aspect. I mean, Jason Tatum up 10. Grabbed a rebound with 5.8 seconds left and looked for the closest official to call a timeout. I think that is like the funniest thing that could ever happen. So with that being said, a win in Chicago on Friday and a Cleveland win against the Atlanta Hawks as well will put the Celtics in the first place in the Group C standings, which should put Boston into the knockout round. Guys, the NBA Cup is okay. Well, there we go. There's the opinion of the Celtics Talk Weekly fans. Franco, I'll start with you. Going into Chicago, running up the score, what are we thinking Friday night?
Torch. Absolutely put the torch on. I think the Chicago Bulls are a good team. I think their roster is still almost unidentified. I don't think they have an identity yet. I think their roster is very mix and match, especially with all the injuries they've faced over the past 2 years. We haven't seen what the Chicago Bulls look like when they're at full health in a very long time. So there's definitely a lot of potential on their roster, but it's not figured out yet. So take that opportunity to run up the score. I think that Vucevic against Kristaps might be a interesting matchup, but having Horford and Tillman mixed in will definitely ease off that for them. I think that they are going to do a good job of just maintaining that score. Once they get that lead in the first quarter, we can't allow it to slip up like we did in the third of today's game. I think, if anything, the bench unit should be able to control the second half and be able to maintain that until the fourth quarter when Tatum and Brown come in and add a little bit more to their point resumes.
Absolutely. Seamus?
Yeah, and I want to add one more point on Peyton Pritchard that I forgot to mention here. Back when he was drafted, we were all questioning, could he be the Marcus Smart replacement, right? Could he be? He essentially has become the Marcus Smart replacement in Boston. We thought initially, Marcus Smart is so good defensively. Peyton Pritchard, of course, he might be, I shouldn't say a better offensive player because we forget how good of a playmaker Marcus Smart was. Not as great of a scorer, but now Peyton Pritchard, he's passed him up offensively. And defensively, I wouldn't say he's bringing the same level, but the same competitiveness as Marcus Smart. And we saw Marcus Smart was our sixth man for almost a decade. Now, Peyton Pritchard, he's our sixth man. He's plus 150 to win sixth man of the year this year. That's just absolutely insane considering Marcus Smart, he didn't win a sixth man of the year award. He won a defensive player of the year award, of course, with the Boston Celtics, but didn't even come close to a sixth man of the year award. And he was our sixth man for nearly a decade. So Peyton Pritchard, it's kind of weird in history looking at it now going, wait a minute. He actually did become our next Marcus Smart. He did replace Marcus Smart in a sense. But getting back to the NBA Cup and the in-season tournament, right? Folks, this is what we're going to see on Friday right here, okay? That's what we're going to see on Friday. If we're playing in Chicago on Friday, get ready for the most red court you have ever seen. I mean, you're going to have to put on sunglasses for this court because, my goodness, some of these NBA Cup courts, you look at them and go, whew, That's a little bright. That's definitely lighting up the room, and that's going to be the case in Chicago on Friday when the Celtics go in there. But this Chicago team, they've definitely impressed me a little bit this season because I really thought Chicago, they were going to come out and not be that great this season because the last 3 seasons, or rather the last 2 seasons, we thought Chicago, okay, well, I should say starting in 21-22, they were the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference at this point in the season. At this point in the season, November going into December, we were all thinking, "Ooh, look at their free agency acquisitions: DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball. They traded for Nikola Vucevic the year before. Already housed Zach LaVine on the roster, and Kobe White. He was kind of coming along as well. Yet that season completely fell apart because of injuries for them. They ended up making I believe they were the 6th seed, and they lost to the Milwaukee Bucks in round 1. And I think it was 5 games, if I'm not mistaken. But the next year, we all thought, okay, this team, they might bottom out. All right, and they might bottom out. They don't. They, of course, finish in a play-in spot. They don't bottom out. They just become a mediocre squad. The next season comes around. Lonzo still isn't in the lineup. We think, okay, this team, they're finally going to bottom out. Here we go, the Chicago Bulls. They do the same thing. They are a mediocre squad. Once again, they finish in a play-in spot.
And 41.
And we could have played them in the playoffs last year. Instead, it was the Miami Heat, of course. And even the year before, they could have they had a lead on the Miami Heat in 2023 late in the 4th quarter in the play and could have knocked them out of the playoffs. Instead, the Miami Heat go and beat us in the conference finals, beat the Celtics in the conference finals, of course. But the Chicago Bulls, I really thought this was going to be the season in which finally, the last 2 years, they were supposed to bottom out. They were supposed to go for a top draft pick. Here we go. And yet this season, the Chicago Bulls, once again, they're right in that play-in range, right in that playoff range. They're kind of middling once again. And it's really because of the talent they still have on the roster. They still have Zach LaVine there. They still have Nikola Vucevic. Josh Giddey, he's not been terrible for them at all this season. People forget he's still 21 years old. Everybody kind of wrote off that trade as, Giddey for Caruso. This is insane. The insane part was no draft compensation with it, but in terms of Giddey as a player, he's still 21 years old and still a quality player. Still have Kobe White there. And of course, that team, they're playing above expectations just a little bit right now. Last season, however, the Celtics, this is where the in-season tournament, or rather NBA Cup, has some history all of a sudden. And whoever doesn't like the NBA Cup, it's understandable. Still early. It's not exactly the NBA Finals. We all know this. But the tournament, this is what the tournament is for, to add some nuance to the NBA early in the season, add some history. And last year, the Celtics, we all remember there's that famous clip of Joe Mazzulla going over to Billy Donovan going, "Billy, we're going to run up the score here. We're gonna keep running it up." And it ended up being important because the Celtics, if they did not run up that score against Chicago, they lost by 17 to the Magic in that Cup group stage run. They would not have made the tournament. They would not have made the tournament after the group stage. Of course, we lost to the Indiana Pacers eventually, but we would not have made the tournament, the Celtics, if they did not run up that score. You don't think the Chicago Bulls in this game on Friday look at this opportunity and go, we remember what happened last year? And I know we think, these players don't really care. But when you're a millionaire and you're playing basketball, first of all, you have to be of the competitive mindset to actually make the NBA, because it is a competitive landscape. Only about 530 guys make the NBA, give or take. And to have the mindset in which you have to make the NBA with, it has to be a competitive mindset. And these guys, they have to find motivation somewhere when they're millionaires, when a lot of them are already paid. Maybe Zach LaVine you're looking at, or Nikola Vucevic, they're paid twice already. They've landed multiple big contracts. You have to find that motivation somewhere. This is where it comes in. We see last year, they ran up the score on us. Let's ruin it for them this year. We're not going to allow them to run up the score. The Chicago Bulls not allowing the Celtics to run up the score, that is. And not only are we not going to allow them to run up the score, we're going to beat them and boot them out of the tournament. That's what the Chicago Bulls are thinking coming into Friday. Yes, it's a normal regular season game, but there is more motivation behind it than we think. And I think we saw last year, a lot of these players did get up for these games. There was a different vibe around them. The Tuesday and Friday games. These players, like I said, they have to find motivation somewhere when sometimes the salary isn't the motivation anymore. It's sometimes in playing the competition, and they're already of that competitive mindset. So on Friday, although the Celtics, of course, they want to run up the score, of course, they want to ensure themselves in the NBA Cup tournament, we got to watch out for the Chicago Bulls because they're a fast-paced team. They play together. They played well this season, and they have a little bit of that history from last year's looking at the Celtics going, we remember what this team did to us. We're not going to allow that to happen this year, and we're going to turn the tables and turn it against them and actually boot them out of this whole thing.
Oh, me? Okay, my bad. I was
good.
times, man. Basically, yeah. I mean, Chicago. I haven't really been paying attention a lot to this year, this season. I'll say, to be honest with you, but I mean, I've seen what their players are like. I've seen how Kobe White had, gotten used to the playing last season. He kind of was in line for most improved player. He's still proven to be, arguably their best player on their team this year. So he's definitely someone to watch out for. You gotta obviously have Brown or Derek White guard up on him.
I think coming in Friday night, you're the Boston Celtics. Playing tournament matters, baby. Los Angeles Lakers.
They got it before we did.
No, we want to win both trophies, right? We want the double crown.
I'm just saying, Los Angeles Lakers winning the playing tournament last year. Celtics got to get it back this year, and they're going to win the NBA championship. They got to do both. They got to go 2 for 2. They're going to be the first team in NBA history, first and only team to win both the NBA Cup and the NBA Finals. Guys, the Boston Celtics tonight defeated the Los Angeles Clippers 126-94 behind a 51 point second quarter. Kristaps Porzingis was your SeatGeek player of the game. 16.6 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 stocks. He was shot 50% from the field in just under 23 minutes. Use code Celtics Weekly for $20 off your first purchase. That is Celtics Weekly for $20 off your first purchase. We love SeatGeek. Use SeatGeek, especially with the holidays coming around. So the Celtics have now won 6 straight games, which is the largest active win streak in the association right now. The Celtics are back in action Friday night. They get a nice few days off, which is huge if you're Kristaps Porzingis, huge if you're Al Horford and Luke Cornett as well, who is out with an injury. Boston, another stellar wire-to-wire performance tonight. For Nick Franco, Seamus Arlingo, Brennan Cox, I'm Justin Lowe. We will catch you guys Friday night. Catch us right here for Celtics Postgame Live. We're out of here.